Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another one of Moosend's webinars. This is Thea.
And Virginia. And today we've got a special guest with us, George from Minutia. So, George, say hi to the crowd.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. And I really hope that you will stay with us until the end.
Awesome.
Now, as you probably have guessed, this webinar is all about making yourself and your audience fall in love with your brand all over again by amplifying your brand story through all means possible. Now, let's see why. First and foremost, brand stories have more power than marketers sometimes give them credit for. So, will you take a look at that first? According to SEMrush, 71% of consumers love to recommend brands they have an emotional connection with. This means that a brand story that is relatable and can elicit an emotional response will help you get more referrals than you thought possible. Now, we can see some more numbers. According to the same statistic, the possibility of leads remembering your story increases by 22 times. The same does not go for lists of facts and figures. And storytelling can increase the value of a product or service by 20%. And let's not forget how users love personal and personalized messages and ads that look and feel like a story. So maybe you're wondering now why those numbers and why storytelling is so important.
Well, as SEMrush put it, feeling is believing. And while marketers are data-driven creatures, they remain human, which means that their and our neural activity will increase by 5 times when listening to a story, as it engages the sensory context in the brain. Who didn't experience a range of emotions during the Battle of Hogwarts? This is because the sensory context allowed the readers or viewers, or actually both, to experience the scene with all senses available. The fact that readers could relate to the characters, they were as complex as they were simple, is what turned Harry Potter into a classic, making us fall in love every time we somehow engage with the story. Now, as romantic as all of the above sounds, there are elements to each story, elements that, by the looks of it, help the users understand, categorize, and react to brands. So let's just take it from the top.
Now, every person has a story, and every person also has a distinctive way of telling this story, be it through their personality, their peers, or simply the way they present themselves and relate to others. So one could claim that a brand's personality stems from branding, or in simpler words, branding is the act of creating your brand's identity in a way that will attract a specific crowd and sometimes drive away the users you do not need in the first place. At its core, branding is the logo, the visuals, a mission statement, and the tone of voice. And of course, all those point in a specific direction, even budget-wise. Now, your website is your home, so to speak. So it's where the preparation happens. It needs to be perfect with spot-on visuals and colors that add to your brand and will be clearly associated with you. You know, kind of like this one. I'm pretty sure you know what that red is, or what the following color combination is. Did you get it? Tell us in the chat. Now, those colors are pretty distinguishable and follow customers throughout their journey with those specific brands. You can take Starbucks, for example. Now, we have their locations, then their app, and finally, their Twitter feed. So what is your perception of Starbucks? It's a calm, a minimalistic place where people can sit back, enjoy their beverages, and maybe get some work done. The green and earthy tones contribute to this calm and collected energy, and they shape the perception users have of this brand.
However, branding is a little more than picking out the right colors, tone of voice, and logos for your product. Branding is, as Jeff Bezos put it, what other people say about you when you're not in the room, which makes working with your audience for your branding efforts all the more important. For example, if you don't give customer support a second thought, you will forever be remembered as that ex-branded red flag users chat about with their friends when they need an example of a purchase or customer journey gone wrong. You see, one very crucial component marketers don't think about when it comes to branding is the following: When users fall in love with brands, sometimes they don't fall in love with those who stand out. Sometimes they fall in love with the feeling a brand story evokes and the way they talk about this brand when discussing with their peers. And how did these feelings come to be?
If branding is the very first meetup, brand storytelling is the first time you bump into the other person and you create a college Ross School of Rachel persona for the other person. Storytelling is the approach that speaks directly to your ideal customer. They are the center of attention, not you. So that way your brand and your audience can be true lobsters. Now, being so in tune with your ideal audience and keeping their attention, being the first thing that pops into their head, builds emotional responses and establishes trust. Your brand needs to tell your audience some type of story that they can trace back to your core, and your core is your values. Just think about it for a second. How fun and exciting would a travel agency be if it had muted tones and a strict design structure? You need your story to be reflected on your efforts every step of the way. That way, users will associate feelings and memories with your brand. Of course, for all of that to come true, you need to create a story that's actually worth being told. Your brand storytelling efforts should be powerful, and for them to be powerful, they need to be unique and showcase real value. So, how do the best storytellers create brand stories to remember? First of all, they use your brand's values. Whatever happens, you need to be able to trace your story back to that. For example, these are McDonald's brand's values, and next to it is a recent campaign from McDonald's. Now, the Equal campaign was a move that could circle back to the brand's values, especially those of community, equality, and inclusion. This campaign is all about accessibility and allowing people with disabilities to enjoy the brand's product just as much as an able-bodied person can. Now, the second is basing their story around a real-life example, a challenge maybe, or a victory. All of those elicit an emotional response. The most prominent example off the top of my head is the Like a Girl campaign from Always. Since 2014, the brand has been trying to change the meaning of doing things like a girl, creating an emotional connection with its audience and celebrating their wins and losses, and eventually becoming a part of their team. The third way is being socially conscious and all for social justice. Now, not too many brands can do that, but in 2023, a very large chunk of a brand's audience asks brands to take a stand against various social justice issues. One such issue was Nike's anti-racism campaign with this core motto. Now, the brand's influence was a real-life challenge that brought about a very prominent social justice issue, that of racism. And the brand has always been one to stand against racism and inequality. All those three elements, though, have one key component. They do not talk about any product. They don't brag about something the brand has built, and they connect the brand with their audience, becoming a part of a human day-to-day life and creating a shared story.
Brand storytelling needs to be full of life and joy. It needs to be something people can connect with and support with their own experiences, should they need to. Telling stories connects users and brands with something way more meaningful than just a product. It's a way to create a specific experience, perhaps make a user's daily life easier, or perhaps make a specific point in time more meaningful. And while using all of the above for marketing reasons might seem like a bit anticlimactic, it actually isn't. Brands care about their audiences like people care about each other. It's a marketer's job to create something out of understanding what the user wants, what they need, and what makes them happy. Such stories resonate with audiences way beyond than a simple sale. They create an actual, a very real bond with audiences. Of course, a story needs someone to tell it. And here's where a strong brand identity comes into play. Your brand is the sum of the elements that make users see you and interact with you. This could include your content, your product, and of course, your social media and email marketing efforts. Your brand identity is packed with visuals. They're like the face of your day. Now, as we mentioned before, a brand as the sum of experiences and interactions between yourself and your customers. Imagine it kind of like sharing your stories and your experiences before the first date with someone. This story will be the sum of specific elements, which include your values. They're the basis of your public image. Your tone of voice, which is how you express yourself and your personality to the public. And of course, your visuals, the looks of your brand on any location, real or virtual. Your brand's identity is what expresses your core. And your core is not establishing the elements above, but making them work in your favor. Since your brand's identity is like a personal appearance, it shapes your audience's perception of you. A strict brand will have strict and neutral colors, clean lines, and a design that is not boring, but not cracky either. Brand identity is visually required to attract the right demographic and keep the demographic that wouldn't care about your product at all away from your business. Of course, all those are pretty nice in theory. Now, let's go ahead and put those tips into practice.
Now, let's talk about your audience first. And let's assume that the audience is a person and you need them to fall madly in love with your brand. Would you go after a person that seems that you couldn't connect with? This is actually the person analogy or the role your audience plays in your identity. Now, cater to your target audience when creating your visual storytelling element. And this means taking notes on the way your audience looks. Your identity is meant to attract the right audience. Your target audience and your visual identity should match, and your visual efforts should be consistent with what your ideal customer kind of looks like. So, what is the person like? You can look into your data and understand their behavior through both demographics and psychographics. Your demographics will determine your audience's age, gender identity, their marital status, their financial status, and so on. On the other hand, though, your psychographics will determine their attitude, their aspirations, what they love, and what their activities are. Now, both those elements will create the ideal look. So let's look at the formula that I drafted with my expert marketing knowledge. Now it's time to get creative, though. What is the look of your ideal customer? Do they love their pop of color, or are they strict minimalists? Are they urban and outdoorsy, or are they fond of strict lines and darker aesthetics? What would the answer of two very different luxury brands would be? So first off, we have Gucci. This is one of the best known fashion brands in the world. It's got a lot of color, a lot of eccentric visuals, and a splash of maximalism that attracts just the right person. And let's see the brand's vision. Being an innovative person is the unique vision. And who could wear a maximalist luxury brand better than an innovative consumer? This first impression is loud, lively, and vibrant.
But let's see what the Gucci individual is not. You see here, hair up in a bun, clear makeup, as much color as needed. Chanel is one of the brands that don't opt for colors. Their customer is the quiet power, the clean lines, the fine and refined looks. Let's see how this correlates with the vision statement. Well, the vision here is threefold: timelessness, sophistication, and functionality. Eventually, the brand aims for the long-term value. Where maximalists innovate, minimalists remain steady and give the look a polished finish every once in a while. Understanding your audience's looks, their preferred color palette, the textures they love, their behavior when they're out and about, the way they wear their hair and do their makeup, allow those two brands to be luxury leaders that aim to attract a different slice of the pie. This understanding will shape your color palette, your visual aspects, and your language.
Colors influence people, and your color palette says a lot about how your audience can perceive you. Now, luxury prefers black and purple as they can be associated with authority and wisdom. Calm and accessible brands go for green, ideal to rest and de-stress. Starbucks can help you ground yourself in one of its stores or even online. Brands with more masculine energy, like law firms, for example, will inevitably use blue, security, tranquility, and a calm but dynamic mindset. If you have no idea what your branded colors should be or how to rebrand your story in a way that will be attractive to your audience, check out what your competition's up to. How do they interact with your audience and how do they steal the show? Their appearance will give you all the visual inspiration you need and will allow you to use an image where words fail, so long as it's the right image that will convey your message and your value. Now, do they use high contrast? Is their aesthetic similar to your audience's? How can you be even more spot on? A survey or perhaps a contest under a branded hashtag could help you a lot here.
After deciding on the color palette, it's time to create your visuals. Email marketing design that will show your story in parts, website design that will dazzle, typography that's just right. Are you a vibrant individual or would you like to be calm and cheeky? Well, meet Fran. He's fun, he's cheeky, but his sour products tell a story of relaxation. So, how does he combine the two? Well, by delivering high contrasting pastel tones, of course. Bright colors and high contrast have everything to do with being more energetic, whereas neutral or muted tones allow users to process and understand information by taking attention away from the design and onto what needs to be understood. Frank here is a little bit of both worlds, with muted pastels and minimalistic typography that allows users to be intrigued but not overwhelmed.
The tone of voice has both short and long-term importance when discussing how your brand storytelling can get you or your audience. Even for rebranding purposes, the brand's tone should be one that your audience would use organically. Now, your brand's tone is the mood. It conveys emotions and creates a bond with your audience through a curated choice of words. Your tone is how you express your brand in written form. It can dictate the nature of interactions you could have with your audience. Now, according to users, memorable content occupies a 40% of what makes a brand's presence the best one. On the other hand, 33% mentioned a distinct personality, and a 32 were all for compelling storytelling. The tone of voice plays an integral role in the statistics above. It's all about how you say things, not what you say. Being confident in your message inspires trust and authority, which is what you'll need to use if you want to attract your audience and become the favorite one in your niche. Now, being professional when dealing with customer queries is imperative, no matter what your brand's tone is like. You may be friendly and fun, but in this instance, you'll need to be friendly but professional at the same time. Be excited about your announcements. There's nothing better than having your other half being part of your joy, but don't be too excited when it comes to resolving an issue. But now we've established what you look like and how you can attract all the right people through your brand's voice and tone. Let's see what happens when your users decide to interact with you.
Brand storytelling is essentially a story in parts, and email marketing is one of those parts. As we know, email marketing can be there every step of the way, from triggered email marketing campaigns to transactional emails and everything in between. Now let's see what happens with its component.
If branding is like seeing the person passing by in the corridor in a teen movie, or the equivalent of Jack seeing Rose for the first time, the welcome email is that meeting of the dogs, and that's enough with the Titanic analogies. Welcome email is pretty much like the first date, or perhaps the first message after the first date. If we want to get technical, the first email every new sign-up needs to receive is a welcome email. Their purpose is simple: to help users familiarize themselves with the brand and establish a connection that won't be susceptible to algorithm changes or any third party. Its significance lies in the fact that a welcome email presents the brand to a new person. Now, a welcome email can attract the newbies and make them stay by using tone that will reflect your brand's values and relevant content that will showcase what you're all about, like so. This is a welcome email by Forerunner. Now, I want you guys to tell us in the chat the feeling this brand and colors elicit, and what do you think this brand does?
And let me show you the second part of the email. This is a mission statement, and it's a way to help users understand why they need to have this newsletter in their inbox. Stories, meditation, ideas. For those of you who thought of the word investors, you're spot on. They're investors, and as such, they need to inspire trust. And their welcome email shows just that. What to expect, even when to expect it. It's nothing like, we should do this again sometime. You have all the details you need, including how to get started with this brand, how their email newsletter is beneficial for you, and some much needed trust that goes a long way. And start by simply saying, check your inbox every Saturday and let us know what you think. A welcome email does way more than just familiarize users with brands or a single letter loaf for them. This is the power welcome emails hold. Some users even anticipate them and could consider you a spammer or a brand that's not trustworthy enough for their time if you don't send them.
Now, through your email marketing series, a user will be able to see the values pinpointed in your mission and vision put into practice. Now, what do I mean by that? Have you created a landing page? If so, does it look and feel like your brand at all? The answer is simply yes. Don't even question that. Creating a landing page, a lead magnet, or anything that aims to attract more users and making it differ so much from your website can only do you harm. Now, not creating a natural continuation with your brand and the elements you're using to put it out there can ruin your chances of building trust with your audience and having them understand the values of your brand. See what happens when Live of Trucks knocks on your door. So when users first come across or are reintroduced to your brand, they usually will manage to pinpoint your brand's values and understand how this correlates to them. This is why you need your elements to be able to share your values by telling a whole story.
And here's where things get all fancy. Now, let's assume that you got your landing page. You attracted your perfect leads, and you sent a gorgeous welcome email that your audience is just craving more. Now what? Now, you're setting your campaigns one by one and get in touch with your audience, retargeting them and showing them how you always think about them. But why imports? Well, it's all because of your email campaigns. You know how it goes. A welcome email that shows who you are. A thank you for signing up email. All for downloading, which I am, as we mentioned in our previous webinars. A newsletter digest with all the important blog posts, news, product updates, and everything you discuss with your favorite person. An order confirmation email in case someone orders something. This one actually adds to your trustworthy and reliable image. Also, let's see here another benefit of the order confirmation email. A transactional email to get your beloved one know that their payment went through. A referral email asking for some feedback and giving your audience the opportunity to show you off to their friends. You might actually meet some of them. The win-back email, a lovely gesture for those times when your users had a little too much time apart from you. Any of those email sequences should look and feel natural and have elements that could be well hidden inside another part of your email. Well, kind of like a Disney Easter egg.
So check this out as a for instance. Now, Spotify, the music streaming giant, has one of my favorite sequences to date. And to be honest with you, their segmentation tactics are immaculate. So let's see their sequences. First of all, the welcome email makes sure you signed up and your account is safe and secure. This is part one before going to an itty-bitty promotion on the brand's part. Spotify Premium. This is what is showcased in typical Spotify fashion. Clear lines, clean typography, fun colors, contrast that is high but not too high. But mind you, this is the first email from this sequence. Now let's go ahead and check the last one out. We've got high contrast but cool tones, calm colors, and a hint at a countdown timer. And this has to be one of my favorite emails. And it's also like Spotify with its greens. And it goes to show that there's no rush until there is. They're all about you having a good time.
Now, when you sign up, the story continues with onboarding emails that make sense and show you how to take full advantage of the product. Each one with its own little word of contrast, guidelines, and specific brand tone. Now let's notice how each email comes with its own set of actionable verbs that leads the user down a natural sequence of actions. You don't need anything complex or fancy here. Just be real and natural, and you'll be all good to go.
Now, I've said it before, I'll say it again. To warn newbies and re engage those familiar with your brand, your safest bet is to be unanimous. Now, think of the person analogy again for 1 second. Let's say that you're Clark Kent, right? And you go save Lois Lane and you're flying down the building to catch her, only to find MJ there. And you know that this is from Spider Man, and you're not too sure why you're saving the wrong person. Now, not having a unanimous tone is kind of like that. Your landing pages, your subscription forms, your email marketing efforts, your social media efforts, everything should reflect your brand's tone. As we said, it inspires trust and allows users to create bonds between themselves and the brands. Your brand probably has some trademark colors, like Coca-Cola's red, for example. Use it throughout your efforts, but don't be too hectic. Just enough so that your audience can recognize you easily. Getting users from point A to point B to point C through your branded tone and colors is kind of like creating an omnichannel experience, but through your appearance and words alone. However, we still haven't talked about that point A. If branding is the first time you see the other person and emails are dates and mixtapes, where does it all start?
Well, your blog. This is your place, your time to shine. This is where it all begins. Your blog is the place where you can and should be established as an authority in your niche. Create content that will resonate with your audience. Use exclusives and hide them behind the wall. Have them register to find out the results of your white paper or your latest ebook. Make sure your brand's tone is prominent and evident throughout your content. You don't need to talk too much, just enough for users to understand why they should sign up to get blog updates, interesting news, and eventually proceed further down the funnel and contribute to your bottom line. But no matter how good a job you do, no matter how hard you try, if you're not targeting the right audience, you're going nowhere. And your audience is looking for specific things. In other words, keywords that should be in your blog. Yeah, you should need SEO and all type of content to beat the competition and be on top of Google's first page. But how does that even work? George, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Virginia. That was all very insightful, I must say. Let me share my screen with you, and please let me know if you can see what I see. I will not do it through Livestorm, so I can be focused, have no distractions. So let me get here for a sec. Just give me a confirmation that you can see what I see. Okay, that's great. Let's get right into it. So we talked about all these very interesting things, and my part of the presentation is to talk about content, okay? And specifically connect storytelling and telling the story of your brand through content. Now, a couple of things that I would like to like share before we begin. The first is that throughout this presentation, we are going to focus on content and examples specifically for such companies, because this is the like types of companies that we serve and we work with and have experience with. And so this is the first thing. And the second thing is that throughout the presentation, if you have like any questions at all, because some things may not be as clear, please feel free to drop them in the chat or in the questions section, and we can discuss them later. Okay. So a couple of things about me. My name is George Cassiotis. I'm the managing director at Minusia. Minusia is an organic growth acceleration agency for B2B SaaS companies, and we help these companies accelerate organic growth through data-driven content marketing and SEO. Okay, so this is why we are going to talk and like focus a bit more on SaaS companies. That's not to say that the things that I will share do not apply to other types of companies. For example, e-commerce, okay, or a publisher, okay. So let's get started with something very basic and very fundamental, which is the content types that you can consider. And of course, we will focus on content that goes to your blog, right? Because there are so many other things that you can do when it comes to content as a way, as a vehicle to tell a story that goes way beyond your blog. Okay, so for your blog, especially if you're a SaaS company, there are three content types that you should consider. The first one is what is called as SEO content. We do not really subscribe to that term. We prefer content that's created for a search audience. I think this is a bit more descriptive of what this is. Then we have, of course, product focused content, where obviously you discuss things and you connect that to the value that people can get out of your product. And last but not least, we have original content. Okay, now original content is something that we initially shared as an idea back in 2022 in a webinar we did with Superpath, and it has, I must say, it resonated really well. And we will discuss original content and how it can help you tell a story for your company, for your brand, right? Now, these are the content types. Inside these content types, one like level down, there are some content formats. So for example, if we're talking about product focused content, for SaaS companies, and once again for other types of companies as well, we think about things like product updates, your help center, customer stories, how-to guides, and so on and so forth. These are all tightly connected and related to your product's capabilities and the value that your product can give to people. Okay, now when we talk about SEO content, we have all sorts of formats like errors. For example, Safari can establish a secure connection, all the way to informational, how to create an online course, commercial, like I'm searching for a live streaming platform and I'm evaluating solutions, job to be done. I have a very specific thing in my mind that I need to do, and I want you to help me do it. For example, I'm looking for a business proposal template, or what we call linkable assets, which we assume that are pieces of content that people will refer to and reference, let's say, in their content. For example, I'm looking for VOP statistics, okay? And then we have original content, which is anything that can, be a bit more or not so connected, let's say, to your product, a bit out of that. Not that, it wouldn't be or it shouldn't be connected to your product. And of course, here, I would say that the scope is not as much like we have a keyword, a target keyword, and we need to get visibility for that keyword, okay? So we have like formats as such as surveys, data storytelling, invented concepts. Some things may not be as clear. We will, clear them up later on. We will share some examples. We have personal storytelling, contrarian content, network-based content, and trends and events, okay? Now, we saw the content types and content formats. Now, let's take a step back, okay? Because in order to understand which content type is the most important for you if you want to tell a story, we need to start thinking about like content marketing strategy and kind of pull ourselves out of content types and formats and all these things and say, okay, what are the things that we should care about when we define the strategy of our company's the content marketing strategy for our company. So there are a few things, and I will not dive deep into each of those. I will just focus on objective. But we have the company stage. This is definitely something that affects your content marketing strategy and how you will do things. Competition, you should be aware of the fact that like some content types like SEO, for example, are way more competitive than original content, okay? Then we have objective, and we will dive deeper into that even from the following slide. we have distribution, which is something that you need to take into account, because some content formats like SEO, for example, SEO content that's created for a search audience, are not, the best when it comes to distribution. You don't have as many options really. The most prominent option is Google search. And then of course we have the life cycle stage, because based on the stage that a person is at, you should, create that type of content or that content format, right? So as I mentioned, we will focus on the dimension of objective. And when it comes to content marketing objectives now, we have 5 objectives, right? We have the first one, which is to increase your brand value. So you do content, specific types of content, specific content formats to increase the value of your brand, which is kind of connected to what we've been, discussing so far in this webinar. We have educate and support, which I wouldn't say that, is connected as much to what we've been saying so far in this webinar. Revenue generation, once again, not so connected. Thought leadership, which is extremely important, and it is connected because through stories and, by telling stories about our company, or as we will see later on, by telling stories through data, we are able to kind of use that as a vehicle to establish ourselves as a thought leader in our space. And last but not least, we have amplification, which is nothing more than, we create content, but does that content have chances of getting amplified? First of all, getting seen by, other people, but getting amplified in the forms of backlinks, social shares, mentions, and so on and so forth. This is also somehow connected to what we've been saying so far about storytelling and telling your brand's story. So from these 5 content marketing strategy objectives, I would say that numbers 1, 4, and 5, increase brand value, thought leadership, and amplification, are the ones that we should kind of focus on for the purposes of, this webinar, of course, right? And as you can see here, what we have done is that we tried to take the content types that we saw earlier, the 3 content types, SEO, product focused, and original content, and also take all the content formats that we saw for each of these content types. And as you can see, I hope it is evident that for the most part, you can see that SEO is not really the vehicle, the content type that you can use to tell your brand story, right? I mean, people know in most cases, especially nowadays, and especially in countries like the US, for example, which is, people there are way more educated than people in other countries and way more sophisticated when it comes to the way they search. They know that, this is a piece of content that's created for a search audience. That's fine as long as, it serves their purpose and what they had in mind in the first place. But SEO, for the most part, is not going to help you tell a story, okay? Product focused, it may help you tell a story, but I would say that the content type that you should focus on if you want to tell a story, and we also connected, telling a story to 3 objectives, content marketing strategy objectives, which is increase brand value, thought leadership, and amplification. Original content is the content type to go with, okay? Now, you may wonder, okay, George, so far so good, man, but what is this original content? And you talked about service and stuff like that, but I have no idea whatsoever what, these things mean. So let's try to make it a bit more plain, and let's see some examples, okay? So here we have an example of a survey by SEMrush. First of all, there are links, so you can click on all of these examples. You will have access to this Google Slides deck, and you can, access all these pieces of content. The performance highlight here is 31 referring domains, and I would assume that they didn't really try to push it, let's say, to promote it heavily. I mean, also because they are a very big brand. I mean, they have, a very big reach just from their own media. But we have a survey on how search savvy Americans are. I don't know about you, but I would like to know how search savvy Americans are. And since I'm also kind of interested in search and content marketing and all these things, I would definitely give this piece of content a read. Okay. Now, one thing that I want you to keep in mind here is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to reach out to 5,000 people to ask them to participate, to your survey. That's not what we are talking about here. You can easily use a tool like Polfis, for example, to run your survey, okay, and then present the data in a visually appealing way. But you have to be focused on your audience. For example, SEMrush, they talk about how search savvy Americans are because they know that, what, my audience is SEO professionals, SEO agencies, content marketing agencies, people who would be interested in a piece of content like that. Okay. So yes, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you can definitely use tools that exist out there and can make things easier for you. But at the same time, you have to be very focused when it comes to your audience, right? Then we have data storytelling, okay? And we have a data storytelling piece by Zippy, which, as you can see, the title reads, we studied 81K page titles. Google rewrote 61% of them. Really? Google rewrites page titles? I would like to know why. And I would like to know what you have discovered through that study. So essentially, they tell a story about something that is relevant, obviously, to their audience, and at the same time, Google rewrites page titles. And by the way, if you need help with page titles, we can help you with that because it's connected to our product's capabilities. So that's a great example of telling a story through data, okay? And at the same time, connecting it to the product's capabilities if it makes sense to do so. Now, I know that something like this may be intimidating, like, come on, George. I mean, what are you talking about? We are a small team. We can't analyze 81,000 page titles. That's not possible. Okay. And let me tell you that you don't need a big sample size to conduct a study like this. Okay. You can start small. You can take a look at our blog. We did some studies before we kind of change the brand identity, and we did some studies. Our sample size was not extremely big or anything like that, but it was extremely relevant to the things that people who buy from us are interested in. Okay, so do not get intimidating by big numbers or anything like that. Once again, be focused on your audience, and you can do something with a smaller sample size, as long as the data is accurate and you have done all the math and you've double checked everything so that no one can call you out. Okay. Then we have invented concepts, and that's very interesting. Okay. Here we have an invented concept by Ahrefs, and as you can see, the title reads a simple SEO strategy, the middleman method. The middleman method? What is this all about? I would like to know what they mean when they say the middleman method. Okay. The interesting thing here is that this piece of content has over 430 referring domains. And the very interesting part is that many of these referring domains and backlinks, okay, websites linking back to this piece of content, referring it, use kind of a relevant anchor text, such as the intermediary technique, the intermediary approach, middleman method, and more, which means that people kind of adopted this term that Ahrefs invented, and they use it when they refer to it. Okay, that's great. That's how you can build a brand, I would say. Okay, you don't have to coin a new term or to invent a new concept every other day. I mean, you can't do it and you shouldn't do it. But when you see an opportunity for something like that, you should definitely go after it. And even if you have a process, a framework, something that your company does, and it does it well, just give it a name. Okay, just give it a name. I can tell you that people understand it and perceive it differently when you give it a name, rather than just saying that the 5-step process to do SEO or whatever. Okay, then we have contrarian content, and we have a piece of content by Minutia written by myself, and the title reads, your SEO strategy hurts your brand. Here is why. I don't know about you, but if I was working at a company that is kind of on the lookout for SEO services, and I'm doing some things on the SEO side, I would like to know why my SEO strategy hurts my brand, right? And so in a world where everyone is trying to convince you that, 11 steps to do SEO right, or the 12-step checklist or whatever to do SEO strategy, we say that, you know what, you are doing it wrong. And not only that, but the way you're doing it hurts your brand. Would you like to know why and what to do instead? When it comes to, a performance highlight for this piece of content, we don't have number of referring domains or mentions or anything like that. But I can tell you that people mention it in our sales conversations. Like, and we can see it, of course, as well through our analytics provider. And the interesting thing is that they come to us and we discuss. It doesn't happen always, but it's very often that someone will come on a call and they will be like, oh yeah, I was reading this piece of content you did about how our SEO strategy may be harmful for our brand. And of course, there are multiple touch points. One of the touch points was that, and it, something clicked, like it resonated with them. And they decided to book a call. Okay. The tip that I have here for you, contrarian content and being contrarian in general is not easy. The tip I have for you is to make sure, be absolutely sure that you know what you're talking about. It's extremely easy for people to call you out if, what you share there has no substance at all, okay? Or if it lacks expertise and so on and so forth. Personal storytelling by Groove HQ. Why I walked away from a 12 million acquisition offer 18 months after our startup's launch. Why? I would love to know. And if I was a startup owner or founder or whatever, I would love to know, dive deep into this piece of content and see, this story shared by, I guess, the founder of the company, why they walked away from such a big acquisition offer. Okay. The performance highlight here is, more than 1,900 shares. And of course, once again, you need to share stories that will resonate with your target audience. Then we have network-based content by the example that we have is comes from User Pilot. And as you can see here, basically, we are talking about an interview of Proudly CEO, and this interview is being repurposed into a nice blog post. Okay, I would say that network-based content is definitely under-leveraged. is a great way to tell a story, and it's also easy because all you have to do is just get on a call with someone or someone you want to kind of approach for some reason, make an interview, transcribe the interview that you did, and then turn that into a beautiful and engaging blog post. Okay. And of course, if you have a podcast or a webinar series, it would be nice, I would say, to turn these like recordings that you have from your podcast or webinars into beautiful and well structured narratives, as the example that we saw here. And the last one that we have is we talked about discussing trends and events through your content in a way to tell a story. And this is a great example. It comes from Loom. I guess you know them. And as you can see here, the title reads Loom Zoom Room: How Loom Sparked a 6.5 billion valuation for leading HR and IT platform Rippling. It's written by the company's CEO, and it explains essentially the story of how Loom helped this company Rippling, I guess, raise money and then get such a high valuation in terms of their company. I would say that when you spot an opportunity like that, you should act fast and just get your content piece out there. Don't care about the piece of content like being perfect or anything like that. When you see an opportunity, something is timely relevant, and in this case, it was timely relevant because it was based on a Twitter thread. Okay, so they spot the opportunity. It's also relevant and tightly connected to the product's capabilities and the product's value, and they created a piece of content. Okay, it's not a 5,000 word guide or anything like that. It's pretty simple and to the point, but It tells a great story, and it's a great way to do content marketing, I would say. Of course, and I will close with that. Original content is not easy. The first point is that it doesn't scale as easily as other content types, as SEO, for example. But at the same time, this is why SEO is so like saturated and way more competitive. Original content is, either you like it or not, top down, bottom up, and company wide, which means that essentially I would say that the whole company needs to be invested into that effort in order for it to work. Okay, you see companies like Gong, for example, and you see the CEO of the company sharing a new data study that the company has done, and you see like so many team members being involved, and then it's only natural that this company will grow as fast, right? Because the whole company is like invested in that effort, and they all try, and they all have the same like goal. The investment may be higher compared to other content types. That's not restrictive, or like it's always higher. No, because the example we saw earlier, for example, by Loom, this is not an expensive piece of content. Okay, they just acted fast, and they created a piece of content. But if you want to do other things like data studies and things like that, the investment may be higher compared to a piece of content that's created for a search audience. Make sure you know your stuff. People can easily call you out. Okay, and I can tell you, because we do that for a while now, both for ourselves and for our clients, that there will be people who will question your work. You should expect and accept that. I would say that pretty much every time we publish a new study, there will be someone who will say something about the data or anything like that. My answer is, go and do your own study. If you have such strong opinions and you know everything, you can try yourself, right? And see how easy it is to do a data study. And last but not least, I want you to know, keep that in mind, because this is extremely important. Attention is not going to come right away. It will come eventually, but in the beginning, no one will pay attention. Okay. That would be it.
Well, thank you, George.
Let me.
Yeah. Awesome. So I see that we have some questions in the comments.
Yeah, we had two questions. One's from Rosemary Yorgaraku, and it's, what is your advice for a brand that has over one ICP? Where would you base your brand identity if you target multiple segments with diverse target audiences that don't share similar traits? Is there a methodology we could use? Well, what I would do would be to actually, first of all, find the common ground those segments have. They usually do have a common ground. This is why they came to your brand in the first place, because you're offering an experience and they want that experience. And then if we're talking about email content specifically, I would segment and I would use dynamic content that has the ability to change according to the recipient. And pretty much this would be it on our end. Now, the second question, I believe George is the most appropriate person to answer that.
Sorry, was that the question, or is there another one?
No. The question reads, original content might not perform as good as SEO content. What kind of distribution strategy would you recommend?
That was from Jasmine, right?
Yeah.
I would say, Jasmine, performance. If we want to talk about performance, of course, you need to kind of evaluate things a bit differently for SEO content, because their performance may be measured in terms of like keywords and rankings and clicks and so on and so forth. But when it comes to original content, I would say, not that that's not its like it can't serve, let's say, that purpose, but it's a bit different. Like, think of it that way. Let's talk about distribution for a second. What are your options when it comes to SEO content? Google search. Okay. You could say social media, but I can tell you that in most cases, no one wants to interact with this kind of content. And then owned media, like, I don't know, your email marketing list or something like that, could be another one. And you could also argue that, you know what, but we like kind of promote some of this piece of content and build links back to this piece of content through manual outreach. So we have 4 options here. But let's think about original content, okay? You have so many options, like sharing this in a community, okay? Sharing it on social media and knowing that, you know what, this piece of content has chances of like getting people's attention and kind of sparking some discussions around it, the topic, and so on and so forth. You can use paid social. You can manually outreach to people, yes, but you are confident that, you know what, like, for example, we did a study, like we have data, we feel more comfortable reaching out to you and asking you to link back to our piece of content with this piece of content than with, you know, a piece of content how to do X in Y steps, right? So I would say that performance is relative, and we should always think about, you know, the nature of the content type and content format, and the fact that yes, content for a search audience, aka SEO content, is good for certain things. And don't get me wrong, not against it, like we do it, okay? But it can't be the end all be all answer to your content marketing strategy. That's all we are saying here. And when it comes to distribution, I would urge you to take a look at the webinar we did with Superpath. They have it in their YouTube channel, and see, you know, how many options you have really when it comes to original content. And I think that this will give you a new, a fresh perspective on, like, okay, this is, first of all, you know, performance should be evaluated differently. And then, yeah, that's right, original content has way more chances of getting amplified, seen, and, you know, getting people to interact with it online.
All right, that's fantastic, actually. And I can see another question here from Stefania Manea. What's the best way to integrate brand storytelling in blog posts? Well, I will redirect you to George's example of the blog post that talked about the 12 million proposal and the refusal. That's actually one of the most genuine ways I've seen, because the person writing that integrated their story, their original story, into a piece of content that's intriguing. Like, I love that. So I think that this is one of the best ways to integrate it.
Yeah, it's fantastic as an example.
Okay, that's perfect. Now, for any other questions, you could email us as well. And the takeaway from all of that is that you could ensure your holiday is as successful as it can get this year.
Well, determine your logs and then determine their logs. Understand how your audience talks and talk just like them. Try to entice them and use the right keywords to make them come to you rather than chasing them. You wouldn't take your date somewhere they wouldn't want to go, and you cannot target users without using the right keywords and creating a unanimous experience. So, thank you guys, and thank you, George, for being here and sharing Minucia's wisdom with us.
Thank you to Moosend's team for the great execution on this webinar. And thank you to everyone who joined us and stayed until the end. I hope it was insightful. And yeah, looking forward to more webinars like this. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. You're
Always a
welcome.
pleasure.
So, until next time.